time. You
That
guys
means you
ask,
love what you do.
well, and you
Yeah.
guys ask great questions, and they're interesting, and they're fun to talk through.
I
So
always have questions. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I actually had a couple questions.
okay, well, let's go ahead and while people are getting in, let's go ahead and get the questions for you guys on the agenda.
Okay. So the on page 345, it was talking about the um, delusional disorder.
Uh-huh.
And so I was reading about that, and it's like, I mean, how's it just not just a liar? I mean, that's all I kept thinking about when they were talking about it. It's just somebody that just lies about everything. I mean, how is
Hmm.
that different, or is it the same thing? Or,
Yeah. Um, it is not the same thing.
okay,
Um, I kind of look at, hi, Jackie. Here comes Marissa. I kind of look at delusional disorder as being more, hi, Marissa,
Hi.
um, um, a reality disorder. Um, because people who truly have delusional disorder totally believe the um, uh, the fantasy world that they create. Um,
right,
they absolutely believe that it's true. Then when we start thinking then about character deficit, what do you think might be the underlying character deficits for something like a delusional disorder? Why would someone need to create an alternate reality? Hi, Laura. Tara's coming. Looks like Jackie's having trouble getting in.
yeah, she was here for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
I'm okay. I'm just finishing eating.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Well, I mean, I guess like if they didn't attach with their parents, if they didn't get attention from their parents, they would. I mean, I guess that would be one reason they had to make up these stories.
Hmm.
But I mean, I guess how do you know? I mean, because so I know, uh, I probably know more than one, but I just remember one guy when I was growing up that, I mean, he just lied constantly. I mean, it was just
Hmm.
constant. I mean, if he was talking, he was lying, and it wasn't like he was. I mean, it's not like he was trying to. I don't know, be mean or anything. I mean, it's just that's just how he talked. I mean, and so you knew that this stuff wasn't true. I mean,
Right.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, if it's, I mean, maybe he was delusional. I guess that's my question is
Well, and
maybe.
that could very well be. That kind of behavior really becomes a defense mechanism and a coping skill. Um, and sometimes it's not one that we think of often in connection with traumatic situations, but typically it is born of some kind of trauma.
Okay.
Mary, you were asking about the characterological. Would it be integration?
That's what I was going to
All
say.
right,
Yeah.
very definitely it would be integration. Yes. Yeah. And what led you to say that, Jackie?
Just couldn't accept the good and the bad.
Couldn't accept, yeah,
Yeah.
can't live in reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they create their own. Um, and you'll see people doing this. I have a client right now who kind of has a fantasy relationship with a woman. And so one of the things that we've been working toward is grounding him more in reality about this relationship. And he's starting to um, uh, be able to be present with the reality of the relationship that he's in, well, which is really no relationship at all. But he's created this whole romance around this woman. And as far as I can tell, she has absolutely no romantic interest in him at all, and has tried to tell him that.
And is this how,
Yeah,
is
go ahead,
that
Wendy.
though how, talking about what Jackie was saying with the integration piece, but is this like they're not able to accept the good and bad reality, but is it also the fact that they're trying to create this world to maintain a love sense of self in some type of way, even though it's not based in reality?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I know that it doesn't make sense, Brett, if you, in one sense, in like the present day reality world that we live in, it doesn't make sense. But it's kind of like borderline and some of the other personality disorders, that if you enter into their world, what they're doing makes perfect sense.
Mm.
You know, I mean, this is a kind of a broad sweep, but you know, one of the things that with borderline clients who are diagnosed with borderline, one of the things that we really have to get on board with is that for them, suicide makes perfect sense. Because they're trying to escape from pain, or to manage pain. And so clients who self-mutilate, their self-mutilation, self-harm makes perfect sense when we enter into their world and listen to what they're experiencing. Now, what we want to do is help them identify alternatives to self-harm. But it makes absolute sense. If you are in agony internally, and cutting yourself allows that to release, that intensity to release for a little bit, and allows you to breathe. You know, then from their standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Or if you can't feel anything, if you're numb, you know, and making a cut lets you know that you are real, then that you can feel something, even if it's just for a little while. It makes perfect sense. And to someone who creates a fantasy world, it makes perfect sense. They're creating the world that they would like to have. And it is strong enough that becomes reality for them. You know, I think I don't have any particular names for this, but I know we've seen and heard people who identify with celebrities, and they are convinced that they have a relationship with those celebrities or with that particular celebrity, and you can't tell them any different. They are convinced that that relationship exists. And so again, we look for, so why does that relationship need to exist? What are the needs that is meeting for this person? And often it will go back to integration. Uh, and Okay, hi everybody. Everybody's kind of gathering in. For those of you who are just joining us, we were having a little pre-chat. Brett had a question about, oops, here comes Debbie. um, what's the difference between delusional disorder and just plain out lying? um, and so we were just kind of batting that around a little bit while we were waiting for everybody to come in. So let me count heads here. I know Austin made it. Okay, somebody told me they weren't going to make it tonight. Okay, we've still got a couple people missing, but we'll kind of move forward with that. Got just a couple of housekeeping things. We are at week 5. The time just goes so fast, way too fast for. uh, uh, it probably doesn't seem to go fast enough for you guys at times, but uh, it just seems like it flies by. So we are at week 5, and this week we are looking at the schizophrenic, schizoaffective, I'll get that out, disorders, as we kind of continue to explore these different disorders that can result, all of them really resulting from character deficits that people experience, and so it's important for us to connect those up. Just a couple of things. Thank you all for prayers, the prayers that you have been sending, and kind of staying in touch with me. We are still doing testing. We're still trying to find out what's going on. My nausea got a little better, and then it came back and has now been a daily thing. So doctors are running tests. I did have a body scan. There is no sign of cancer in my bones. So that was the wonderful news for that. So now they're trying to figure out why I'm having the issues that I'm having with the bones. So it's just, these are kind of rule out, just like we do with mental health. There, it's check things out, rule things out. Main thing is I've been really tired. I haven't had the stamina that I'm used to having, and I am a horrible patient. I have absolutely no patience with with not feeling well. So I meet again with my team of doctors on Wednesday morning, and then next Monday I have another meeting with another part of the team. So it's kind of ongoing, which that leads me into I absolutely appreciate your prayers and your patience. I have been trying to get grading caught up with the 2 classes. I've been trying to go back and forth, so nobody is really left hanging forever. My goal is to get caught up by the end of this week, because as far as I know, I only have the 1 meeting with doctors, and right now I am not seeing clients on Thursdays. I'm only seeing them on Mondays. So I have a little bit of breathing room with that, and hopefully I can get grading caught up. I've never been this far behind as I have been in this spring semester, and it bothers me. So I don't like not being able to give you feedback as quickly as possible. Quizzes. The other thing that I am trying to do is now go ahead of you on the quizzes and recheck them, because the first 2 quizzes that you guys have taken, there have been errors in the responses, and so I was able to go back and change. I got permission to change the answer that was wrong on the first one. When I did that, those of you who had gone back and changed your answer to make it match the quiz, it took your points away. So I'm trying to get all of that straightened out so that you don't get penalized for those points. And then this last quiz, there was another error. What was Brett, help me out here. What was the answer that you gave and a bunch of you gave?
It was hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance, yes. And so far, I've not been able to get permission to go in and change that answer. If I can't change it, then if you will let me know if you submitted the answer of hyper, let me know what you did, because again, if I go in and change it and you changed your answer to match what the test wanted you to say, it will change your points again. So, and hopefully this week, I will get that caught before you guys get into that position. So again, I apologize. It's we've not used quizzes like this intensely in courses prior to this. You guys are the guinea pigs again. You are the first course that we've used this kind of quiz in to replace a learning activity. So, and it's tied into CACREP, into meeting CACREP requirements. But we'll stay after it and we will get it straightened out. You will get all of the points that you have coming to you. I'll see that happens. Okay. Now, do you guys have any questions?
I know that you said that you're going to catch up on grading this week, but with that in mind that we don't yet have our character for the paper, that feedback yet, is that still going to be due Sunday?
Yes, but I will go, that will be the first thing that I go in and give you. And, you know, would it help if I delayed that till Tuesday? I can't give you another week on it because you're going to have to start week 6 activities. But would it help if I said deadline midnight Tuesday?
I think for me, Mary, the question is my diagnosis correct? And then I'm building a treatment plan on the diagnosis.
Yeah.
If
and
I'm graded on the
that'll be the first thing for you guys that I grade tomorrow.
Okay.
So you will have.
I didn't know
if
we were getting graded on the diagnoses, because like if I'm not graded whether that's correct or not, then I can still build out a treatment plan
that's a
based
feedback. Yeah, that's going to be a feedback grade. It's okay. What did you base your diagnosis on? Does it meet DSM-5 criteria? If you've made a diagnosis, does it clearly show that it meets DSM-5 criteria? And if not, then what needs to happen? How does it need to be altered?
So then it would impact the rest of our treatment plan potentially. Okay.
It could potentially. You know, but the key there is really the whether you have criteria to make the diagnosis, whether you have valid criteria to make the diagnosis. Now, some of the things like we're going to watch a video clip here in a minute about schizophrenia, and one of the designators for the schizo cluster is that it has to have been with the symptoms have to have been happening within the last month. You're not going to be able to, you know, most of the diagnoses in DSM-5 are also tied to a period of time. If you're doing a movie or a book, you're not going to be able to necessarily know that. So I won't be grading off for things like that. I might make a note in my feedback to you that says, you know, there would also be, if you were working with a client, there would also be a need to talk about duration. How long has this been going on? But you know, when you're doing a fictional character, it's really difficult to do that, to have that piece. So, other questions?
And now, as we've learned more about different things, and we realize, oh, I think this is comorbid with what I put the first time. So is that okay that we go ahead and add? Okay.
Add it in. Yeah. Now, the other thing on that assignment that you want to be really sure that you pay attention to is the criteria for the peer-reviewed articles. And notice that you have to not just cite the peer-reviewed article, but you have to include, excuse me, you have to include in your treatment plan, in your paper, you have to include what information you used out of that, where that peer-reviewed article ties in to your diagnosis. Okay? So it can't just be a citation at the end. It also has to be something from the article that is pertinent has to be included in the body of the.
Where in the treatment plan would we include that?
Wherever it's appropriate. Let me see if I can anybody think of an example from a peer-reviewed article that you've read that ties into your diagnosis symptoms?
Found an article about Mahler on attachment. So I was going to add that into my criteria.
Okay. Now, is there something, Debbie, particular in that article that was pertinent to you, that you felt like was really pertinent?
As it relates to how I diagnosed him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it described the criterion that Mahler used for assessing attachment disorders and how that led into anxiety disorders.
Okay. And that would be the way that you would include it. That in in so-and-so's article, there's a discussion of how Maury's method of describing attachment disorders, or describing attachment, and how it connects with character disorder. Okay. So you take the information in the peer-reviewed article and you link it up to where it's pertinent in your paper, in your diagnosis.
Okay. Also, I was looking at the rubric and it mentioned something about the Townsend character structure model. So, like for our homework partner treatment plan, are we doing 2 treatment plans? The character structure treatment plan as well as the other?
Well, what I'd like for you to do is to always be considering the Townsend character structure. That whenever you are identifying a diagnosis, that one of the things that you are automatically doing is asking yourself, okay, so what, which character deficit or deficits, because it can be more than one, which one would we be looking for here to be able to dig into the root issues, the core issues, rather than just the symptomology.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, just get in the habit of whenever you're doing a diagnosis for part of your diagnosis to be considering what are the character deficits here? Where do I want to start working with this client in character development? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
Are you still doing an optional class next Monday, Mary?
I will, yes. Mm-hmm. So if you have things that you want us to talk about or questions that you want to ask, that you want to send them to me ahead of time, you are more than welcome to do that, and I will include as many of them as I can. My agenda for tonight is to do some catch up, check in with you guys, see what maybe you needed, and questions that you had to ask. And then like I said, I have a short video that does some explaining about, because I think sometimes schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorders can get kind of lumped together and they can be kind of confusing. So I thought we would start there, but then I really would like for us to have time tonight to do some role plays, at least one, if not more than one. Okay, so let me share my screen. All right. If you can't hear this, shout at me, because I did what I think I'm supposed to do. Come on. There we go.
So like I said, today's topic is kind of going to be DSM driven, but I'm also going to give, at the end, you're going to want to stay tuned because I'm going to give you some treatment options and ways either to help those around us or to get help for yourself. So don't forget to stay tuned to the end when I give those tips out. But I'm going to talk about schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorders. And what do we do if we have that diagnosis, or if someone around us has that diagnosis, and what does it mean, right? Because people throw around terms a lot. And that's one of my main frustrations with therapists, is that people will be like, you're so blah, 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 and they'll throw out some diagnosis. Oh, I think that they have blah, blah, blah. And I'm just making weird noises because it's all over. They'll say, you're schizophrenic, you have delusions, you're anorexic, you're borderline. People will throw around terms without actually knowing. So that's why I'm making my videos. Okay, so without further ado, schizophrenia is, I guess I'll just read exactly what it says, but I want to make sure that it makes sense. So let me know if you want me to do follow-up videos. But the essential features of schizophrenia are a mixed characteristic signs and symptoms, both positive and negative, which I'll explain, that have been present for a significant portion of time during a 1-month period, with some signs of the disorder persisting for at least 6 months. Now, I wanted to whiteboard this because it gets really confusing about the time, but all you need to know is that if someone has had schizophrenia-like symptoms for more than 6 months, then they have schizophrenia. When it's a shorter duration, there's all these sorts of different names that I've been learning from my licensing exam. But the positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia are as follows, okay? So positive symptoms, the way I remember this in my mind, is positive plus we're adding something to someone. So it's not just me as myself. I'm seeing things that aren't there, potentially. I could be hearing things that aren't there. I could be feeling things that aren't there. Think of your senses. Not many people like smell things that aren't there or even feel things that aren't there. The most common are seeing and hearing. Now, when people have those, and they're called delusions and hallucinations, okay? Now, hallucinations are those audio and visual things that we're seeing that aren't there. Like if you've ever seen A Beautiful Mind, he has those 2 people that are with him that no one else can see or hear, but he can see and hear them. They're like his friends, right? That would be the visual, because he sees them, and also he's hearing them, right? So he'd have those audible hallucinations, okay? Now, delusions, which is the next most common, is those firmly held beliefs. So when I worked in the hospitals, I had one client who, no matter what I told him, believed I was working for the FBI. And even though I was like, I don't even have any of the things that it would take to work for the FBI, you know, there's nothing I could say. It's a firmly held belief. Now, the most common beliefs are those of like the Army, FBI, people are watching me type, and the religious type. Jesus told me to do this. Jesus is speaking to me through my television, telling me this, that, and the other. Those are the most common. But that doesn't mean that they can't be other things. I have many clients who've been diagnosed with schizophrenia as well as their eating disorder, because part of their firmly held beliefs had to do with their belief that they were overweight when they were underweight, or the belief that they needed that much food even though they didn't, or there's a bunch of different things, right? And I personally don't usually diagnose separately, but some people do. So that's just another example of a delusion, okay? So far we have hallucinations when we see or hear or feel things that aren't there, and we have delusions, firmly held beliefs. Those are positive symptoms of schizophrenia, okay? Because we're adding something to it, to ourselves. Now, the negative symptoms of schizophrenia are things that often go unnoticed longer. These are things like what we call like a blunted affect, which really just means lack of emotion. So someone will be very unexciting and they have trouble expressing things and just very, very boring, right? And it's a very blunted, like there's no emotion. And I'm trying to think if there are other ones that they gave. Negative symptoms, yeah, restrictions in the range and intensity of emotional expression, flat affect, and in the fluency and productivity of thought and speech, which is called alongia, which is like if you you really have trouble putting sentences together. It's very slow and we have a lot of trouble. And that can also kind of go into the same realm as what we call disorganized speech, which if you work in a hospital, they call it word salad. And that can be like, but why did you come out sweeping the floor? Book, beach, towel, frustrated, and it won't make any sense. And in their mind, it makes sense, but they have a lot of trouble putting it together. And so it comes out as this, you know, very difficult thing to understand. And until people are properly medicated, it can be really difficult and it can be frustrating for them. Imagine if you have all these things you want to express, but people look at you like, what? Right? Because none of it makes sense together. So that can be part of that, as well as another negative symptom can be they have trouble with initiating goal-oriented behavior. So I need to get to the store because I'm out of milk, but they don't know where to start. I may walk out without any shoes on and no money, or I may walk to a clothing store looking for milk. So you can kind of see where they have trouble making that happen. Okay, so that is schizophrenia. Now, I know there'll probably be a ton of questions. It's really, I'm taking like pages and pages of explanation and turning it into like 3 minutes, right? So leave your questions below. I can do more on this if you want. Now, the second diagnosis is schizoaffective disorder. Now, I heard from many of you who've gotten this diagnosis, and this is the difference. I'm just going to differentiate it from schizophrenia itself. So schizoaffective disorder it means that you have an uninterrupted period of illness during which there is either a major depressive, manic, or mixed episode concurrent with the symptoms to meet schizophrenia. So you'll have a delusion or a hallucination while you also are having some sort of depressive episode, or you could be manic. It could be part of your, it's honestly bipolar crashed into schizophrenia and it created schizoaffective. If bipolar and schizophrenia had a baby, it'd be schizoaffective disorder, okay? And that's the easiest way to understand it. And people will have different subtypes. I mean, some people will only have major depressive, just like people with bipolar too. Remember my old video? If you haven't checked out my bipolar video, you should check it out, because I put it on the whiteboard and I kind of explain the different episodes. So that's what schizoaffective disorder is. So you may have some psychosis, the delusions, hallucinations, but you also have that mood lability that goes along with bipolar disorder, okay? Now, like I said, what do we do? So we have these diagnoses. I'm gonna move this because it's making me hot. Okay, so what do we do? The number one thing, whether this is you or this is a friend or a family member, they need to get medication. And I know medication, the devil. We don't want to be on it. We want to be holistic. But trust me when I say medication can save your life, okay? The sooner we get on it, the sooner we can get better. Think of your brain as like a balloon and it's filled with sand, okay? And as we connect, let's say we have a hallucination, right? And I connect, oh, that figure, that I see that shape, and that's a person, and I talk to that person. We're rolling a marble in that sand. And the more we allow that to happen, the deeper the ridge in the sand gets. And it's harder for our mind to break out of that. Does that make sense? That's the best way for me to conceptualize it. So let's say we've only made that connection a couple times, and then we get our medication on board, and we realize that those delusions and hallucinations aren't real. We stop making that groove deeper, and our brain can heal, and we can live our life in a more normal manner. Okay? So please, please, please get medication, and encourage those people around you to get proper assessments. And if this is you, please go see a doctor, go to the hospital, make sure you get a proper assessment and you can get the proper medication, and ask questions about your medication. We want to make sure the side effects are good, they don't interact with other medications, stuff like that. The second thing is, please find a group or a PHP program. At many hospitals, they have these where you can go and you can meet other people who are working on this, and it can be so refreshing and good to know that other people have struggled and they're doing fine, and they've worked things out, and different government agencies will help you pay for this and get the help you need. There's even boarding cares where you can live and stay if you're older, and they'll take you to and from PHP programs. I used to run one with some other colleagues of mine at there's a group of hospitals down in Orange County I used to work at. So they're available, they're there. Please look into that. And the last thing that I always encourage people to do is do reality testing. So if you are not the person who has this diagnosis, but you're a close family friend or any of the above, let them know that you're a safe person that they can talk to and they can be honest with. And reality testing is this. So let's say I have schizophrenia. I live with Sean, right? I hear something. I hear someone talking. I hear someone saying, hey, so Katie, you really need to do that because that person, remember, they're going to hurt you. I can look at Sean and say, did you hear that voice? It was like a woman's voice and it sounded like this. And he says, no, I didn't hear it. I've just done reality testing. I've just checked in with someone who I know doesn't have schizophrenia, and I've asked them about something that I heard, and I'm just checking. I've had clients when we're at the hospital, right? We're in the hospital and there's a lot of overhead, which I think this is cruel, but they'll do overhead calls like, Nancy to the 4th floor, we have a whatever, right? And it'll come through all the speakers. This is really hard for people who have schizophrenia and are trying to do reality testing. They'll ask me, Katie, did you hear that? Yeah, no, that was really, it was the nurse, she was calling. Okay, just making sure, right? Because if we are having those breakthrough symptoms, if we're seeing or hearing again, we may need to increase our medication or switch or things like that. So those are the things that I would recommend. Getting a treatment team, right? The groups, the PHP programs, getting on medication, and doing reality testing as often as we can to make sure that everything is being helpful and giving us the aid that we need, right? So let me know if you have any further questions. Share your experiences as always, and we will work together towards a healthy mind and a healthy body. Just as a side note, know that there is no stigma attached to either of these diagnoses or any diagnoses. Our hospitals and our treatment teams and people in the mental health field are more than well equipped to handle this. We see it all the time. We want you to come and talk to us because the sooner we can get help, like I said, the sooner we can get you well and back in your life and feeling better, right? And just so you know, I know I use the acronym PHP. What that stands for is Partial Hospitalization Program. And these are usually at different hospitals or clinics. And what that means is you come during the day for different groups or therapy sessions, and then you leave in the evening and go back to your house. So it's just partial. So you're there for part of the day. And don't forget to check out my website also. I have
unmute myself there. So that's just a really brief discussion of a broad range of symptoms. I think couple of important things to take away is that she talks about the labels we use for people. I think so-and-so is schizo. When really, right now everybody is word just went out of my head. narcissistic. We went through a period of time when everybody was codependent. We went through another period of time when everybody was borderline. It became part of the common vernacular. And so we want to be extremely careful that we are not falling into that. That when we are diagnosing someone, when we are using some type of label with someone, we want to be sure that the criteria fit that label. And that's why a lot of times in things that we describe in Townsend, you will see the word borderline features, or some other kind of features, which means that we're seeing some symptomology that is in that realm, but do we know yet whether it's a full-blown personality disorder? Not necessarily, and that's why it's so important to look at those that character structure, those 4 character structures, and the potential deficits there, because that's where we really can dig in and make a difference in how the person experiences life. We've had information for a long time in terms of diagnosis criteria. Now what we're doing is bringing this characterological piece alongside of it. And while it is, the way we do it is kind of unique to the Townsend program, what you're going to see as you look out into the field more is that this is more and more becoming the norm rather than the exception. Looking at attachment especially has really become more accepted in our profession, and much more research has been done to the impact of which is, it really led to the organization of the latest DSM-5. This DSM-5 is the first diagnostic manual that has been developmentally processed, and presumably, because there are so many ongoing studies, presumably the next, whenever the revision of the DSM-5 comes out, it will lean even more toward developmental issues and attachment, and how that impacts across the lifespan. What questions do you have about schizophrenia, or experience that you've had with any of the schizo realm of disorders?
I heard about a program in Norway that doesn't use medication, and it's very, very effective apparently. I don't know if that's a thing we can address. They use like a group therapy,
right?
And apparently the whole idea is that their idea is that there's a lot of failure rates in places that use medication right away. Something about the medication. I don't know if you can speak to the type of meds for schizophrenic patients.
Well, again, it's gonna it's gonna depend on the symptomology, and it's always with medication. We want to know why we're medicating what we're addressing the medication to. if we have someone who is totally outside of reality, then sometimes using medication immediately is needed to keep them from experiencing a deeper psychotic break. Not everyone who is having a schizophrenic episode is experiencing a psychotic break. Again, that's where assessment and diagnosis becomes so critical. But I think too, Jeremy, that particular program is modeled along the same lines of some of the initial programs that were developed, like by Marsha Linehan with the dialectic therapy to address those underlying deficits. What did this person not get that they needed? And there's so much about this in terms of neuropathy that we don't know yet. It's an area that is still definitely very much under study. Are there ties between what happens in the brain with schizophrenia or some of the schizophrenic spectrum? Are there ties with what happens with dementia? With what happens in the brain with dementia? Are there any similarities? Because the process, there seem to be some distinct similarities in how the brain processes information. That's about as deeply as I can speak to that, Jeremy. To me, it's a fascinating thing to keep watch on and to see what people are learning. I think certainly a program like that which has experienced efficacy. You want to look at, so what are they doing that is of value? Most of you have been around me long enough to know that I am not an and or person. I'm a and also person. And so to me, it's not, do we use medication or do we use therapeutic intervention in techniques and other ways? It's what is the cocktail of the two that we need to use to give this person a chance at the most effective life that they can have. And, if a schizophrenic needs medication, that tends to be a lifelong thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be on the medication constantly throughout their life. It depends on what's happening with their brain and with their episodes. Sometimes they might need the medication for a while, and then they do fine without it. The trick there is having someone who is observing the client, so that when those telltale symptoms begin to show up, that the person is losing contact with reality, that immediately something there's an intervention. And so maybe medication comes in at a very low grade, but it helps the person to stabilize and to avoid going. What we really try to avoid is a person making a psychotic break, because what we do know about that is that sometimes that psychotic break can be so deep that somebody can't get back from it. It doesn't matter what medications we give them. It doesn't matter what we do. The break is so severe that the brain can't repair itself and they can't get back from it. So we really want to avoid that.
Do you understand what's happening physiologically that causes that?
I wish we did, Debbie. It's it's that combination of it can be stressors, triggers. It can be a chemical imbalance that I'm thinking of the two most severe cases that I've worked with in my time in this field. Believe it or not, both were missionaries. And they just totally lost track or lost contact with reality. There was a combination of factors. There was a chemical component to it. There was a performance component to it, that being in the mission field in the areas where they were. For one thing, they expressed or they experienced a great deal of contact with spiritualism. And at least one case, the person had village elders who were actively cursing over a period of years, not just for a week or a month, but over a period of years. And eventually it did. We've talked about how our brain forms pathways, neural pathways. And eventually, and part of this was that they weren't getting any support from, they weren't getting any mental health support from the people who had put them on the mission field. It was, God sent you here to do this. Yes, tough things happen on the mission field, but they weren't really getting any, they weren't getting any empathy. They weren't getting any attuning. And so one of them, we were really, at the hospital while I was working, we were very concerned about her, about whether or not she was going to be able to make it back into reality. And eventually she did, but it took almost 5 months. And typically we would have people in the hospital for maybe 30 days at most. But it took 5 months to get her back to some semblance of being able to recognize reality. And that was done through through medication, and also through a lot of cognitive work, and just really just a lot of, we didn't call it attuning then, we called it active listening. But just being present with her and listening to, not negating her reality, but listening to it and helping her to move more and more into a present reality. And what would happen would be she'd be able to come out a little bit, but then the fear would be so strong that she would retreat again. Yeah, you will hear all kinds of fascinating stories about people dealing with schizophrenia, or the what I call the schizo spectrum, and for some, the stories are really sad. I have a really, really good therapist friend. We've been friends for probably 30 years. And his wife was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And she was managing it fine for quite a while. And he just went home one day, and she was an artist, and she had destroyed everything that she had done, every art piece that she had done, and she took off. And they didn't find her for almost 3 years, and found her living in a women's shelter. And part of the tragedy of situations like this is that as long as the person is not a harm to themselves or anyone else, they couldn't get a judge to agree to for her to have to take her medication again, or for her to be brought back to Indiana. When they found her, she was in California. They couldn't get a judge to agree to that because the judge said she was no threat to anybody else, or to herself or to anybody else. And if she wanted to stay in the women's shelter, that was her option to do that. So eventually they lost contact with her, and she's this has been a long time ago now. The girls are both, they had 2 girls. The girls are both in their early 40s, and occasionally, every few years or so, she will call one of the girls, but she won't tell them where she is. And it's it's a very unsatisfying conversation for them. But you cannot force people to get the help that they need. That's why some of these kinds of disorders are so heartbreaking for us to try to work with, because we know the things that help people, but sometimes you just can't force them to do what would make a difference for them. You probably, the chances of these, yeah, go ahead.
Just 2 quick questions.
Yeah,
One
go
is,
ahead,
I think I understand and appreciate why you're, I don't want to say hesitant, but having your balanced response about medication.
Yes.
But I did, just from a textbook and I guess from a quiz perspective, when I read through chapter 10, I was struck by how much they talked about medication relative to all the other diagnoses that we've talked about. And, even breaking it down by phases, and they state in here that, most people, I guess they say, need to take medication. So it left me with the sense of, if I had a schizophrenic diagnosis, likely, especially depending on their acute symptoms, the first thing you'd want to do is get them on medication. So I just wanted to ask for from a textbook perspective and an expectation, it sounds to me, based on this, that would be one of the first things we want to look at.
That would for me.
Okay.
That would definitely be a place where I would want some medication on board to give us a jump start.
Okay.
And the reality is that with some of the mental disorders, there is a chemical component to it. And if the medication is not on board, we can do all the therapy we want to do with people, all of the intervention techniques that we can try, and it will not make a difference because their body is fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting what they need to be able to live in reality.
Okay.
I'm not a slap a medication on it person at all. For instance, with borderlines, people who are diagnosed with borderlines, my experience has been that medication rarely helps anything but short term. So I'm not a jump on board the medication bandwagon, but I am certainly let's use what God has given us. If it makes a difference, in a significant difference in someone's life, then let's use what God's given us.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. My other question was, just briefly, the in the text it says at least a minimum of a month. The gal in the video
Right.
said the same thing, but at least a month and for 6 months.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning of the class in the last month. So I just wanted to clarify if they had had a 6 month type of episode but had been symptom free for a month or two when they came to see you, for example, would you still go forward with a schizophrenia diagnosis if they met the criteria in every other way?
That would be a time thing, because in order to actually give the diagnosis, we have to be within the month of an episode happening.
Okay.
You know, now once somebody has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and we know that the criteria are there, then what we want to look at, we look at it in those 6 month frameworks.
Okay.
Because schizophrenics are like some other of the disorders. They tend to cycle. And so one of the things that we want to try to see is, so what is the cycle
Right.
that we're seeing there?
Okay. So when it says for at least 1 month in here, what you're saying it's saying is within the last 1 month. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's typically what we look at is because if they're not in an active episode, then we really can't gauge the criteria. Okay. So, other questions?
Is there a site? So in the book, it mentioned that most of these people have had, people with schizophrenia disorder have had a lot of, or at least a traumatic event in their life. And then it talks about triggers. Is there ever only a physiological component or neurochemical component where there have not been traumatic events in their past, or somewhere close by, either in childhood or maybe in the last 10 years or something, and that this develops? Is that ever kind of the case where it's strictly biological?
Simplistic answer to that, Wendy, is yes.
Okay.
But we will usually see symptoms. Oh, what's the movie where the kid says, "I see dead people"?
Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense. Thank you. You know, that child, we would really be looking at, you know, is there something here that is foreshadowing full-blown schizophrenia? You know, does this child really believe that he sees and engages with dead people? Is that his reality? Does it change? Although, you know, medication in people under 18 is really an iffy. We don't know so often what the implications of medicating under 18 are going to be. And I would venture to say even as up to 25, because the brain is still developing. Sometimes it becomes necessary, again, for the safety of the individual. It becomes necessary to do that, to intervene with some kind of medication. Typically what we will see is that there will be red flags. If not full-blown symptoms, there will be red flags.
Okay.
The reason I'm hesitant about that, Wendy, is it's so hard for me to say that that I don't think anything is helpless in God's realm, or unable to be helped in God's realm. And yet I've seen the reality of what can happen to people's minds, and we just don't have the capability. I mean, we can say, well, pray, and certainly we want to bring that prayer power alongside what we are doing. But it can be really frustrating and really discouraging when you have prayed and prayed and prayed for someone's health to be restored, for their mental health to be restored, and there is just there's no respite from it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've known several people that have taken their life, begging God to heal them. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So to me, it's really one of those places where we have to reserve judgment and keep learning as much as we can, and recognizing our own limitations. I wrestle with God about this periodically. Why would you not heal this? And so far, he hadn't given me any answers. So it's something that I will continue to wrestle with. But there is that very strong core belief in me that God is not willing that any should perish. So these are the kind of philosophical discussions that we have with our colleagues, and that just kind of help keep us going when we reach the awareness of our own limitations, what we really can do. So, I don't want to leave this particular discussion without bringing in that one of the first things that we always want to discern when we have someone who is presenting with schizophrenic type symptoms is that there is not a substance issue, because a number of the substance issues can mimic schizophrenic type symptoms. And so we want to absolutely be sure that the person is not either under the influence or suffering or experiencing a flashback from being under the influence. Now, reality is people won't always tell you the truth about that, at least initially. And so sometimes it takes a while to discover that. But it is certainly, when we are dealing with this spectrum of disorders, it's one that we absolutely want to not look over or ignore or miss. And you can't diagnose schizophrenia if the source of the schizophrenia is substance abuse. Okay. All right. Like I said, I want us to be able to do at least one role play tonight. I think we've got time to do that. What would you like to see a role play? What would you like to see done in a role play? What would be helpful for you?
would you like to role play how you would assess somebody without them knowing you're assessing, without making it so obvious and still attuning to them?
Okay. Let me clarify, Debbie.
It's just a suggestion.
Yeah, are you asking about assessing just during an interview? Not necessarily assessing someone who's not aware that they're being assessed. Okay. Yeah, we could do that. Who wants to present me with some with a challenge here? Who's a good actor or actress? Doesn't have to be a real life situation. You can totally make it up.
I guess I can volunteer.
Okay.
That's how I got in the military.
Yeah, that'd do it.
Volunteering when I shouldn't.
That would certainly do it. What branch of the military were you in?
The Air Force.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have an idea? Go ahead.
I do, because I have somebody in my life who has been diagnosed with something and who's really struggling. So, and we talk a lot. So.
Okay, Jackie.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome, Jackie. Thanks for coming in today. And how about sharing your story with me? What brings you in today?
Quick clarification. Can I be mandated?
Oh, mandated to come in? You absolutely can. So we'll change that a little bit. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for coming in today. I realize that this may not be the place that you would really like to be today.
It really is not.
Yeah, and I sure don't blame you for that at all. Coming into counseling is scary enough already without somebody forcing you to do it.
I mean, I don't know if I think it's scary. I just think I don't need it. I'm fine. I don't need to be here, but the Marine Corps is making me come in. So, I mean, they're going to kick me out if I don't come to counseling. So here I am.
So, yeah, it sounds like that's a consequence that you really don't want.
Yeah, I mean, staying in the Marine Corps is everything to me.
Okay.
But I'm fine. I don't need this.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's make that happen. Let's prove that. And and since you have to be here anyway, since you're being forced to be here, let's make it something productive for you.
Okay.
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 What led up to you being mandated into counseling?
Well, I mean, I was in Japan, and this guy, I mean, you probably know from my records, but this guy, I mean, yeah, we were all drunk and having a great time, but I mean, this guy raped me. And I mean, we were all drunk, but he did. And so, yeah, I may have responded bad to that. I struggled with that for like a week, but then I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
Busted cutting myself, and then they thought I had issues, and everyone else was doing the same stuff I was doing. So that was the only thing that happened. That guy's not in trouble. He's at work. He's fine. No one's doing anything about that. But here I have to come to counseling, and it's just stupid. I'm fine.
Yeah, I bet that feels really unfair.
Yeah.
He's the one who raped you.
And everyone thinks we were
to go on with life, and
yeah. everyone thinks we were just, that I wanted to do that. And I mean, I was pretty wasted, but I think I remember pretty clearly, and I didn't. So, you know, and I'm fine. I mean, I'm 18 years old and doing better than everyone else here. I don't know why I have to be here.
So how long ago did this happen, Jack?
Like 6 months ago.
So about 6 months ago?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Marine Corps just thinks because I was cutting and, you know, they've made me go to, I mean, I did try to commit suicide once, but then I'm fine. I'm not doing that anymore. And then they made me go to some other counseling thing and just thought it was stupid. So I didn't really talk, and I don't really trust them anyway. I'm not really going to tell them anything. So now I have to come to this group thing because now they're threatening to kick me out.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about not trusting?
I mean, I don't trust anyone here. It's just all bull. My scores are good. I work hard. I work circles around all the guys that I work with. And I think just because I'm a woman and because I do better, you know, better work than anyone else around me, I don't really trust anyone here.
So it's really feeling like there's some discrimination for you.
I do. I think it's because I'm a woman. They're just, you know, treating it this way and not. The scores came out for our work, and my scores were better than anyone, but yet I'm not getting my, you know, promotion because of this whole thing. And I just think it's because I'm a woman, and I don't trust anyone here. They're just jacking me around and totally in control of my life. And and I just, you know, it's just bull. But I really want to stay in the Marine Corps, so I don't know what to do because I have nothing if I don't have the Marine Corps. I mean, I've got good savings, and you know, I'm married, and he's, you know, he's kind of messed up. He just sits around and plays video games all day. But I just don't have anything. If I get kicked out of the Marine Corps, I don't have anything.
It's really the center of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I got in when I was 17, and I already had my associate's degree, so I got my rank earlier than anyone else in basic, and so I've done great. I've accomplished more than anyone I know my age. And now this, so they're threatening to kick me out.
That sounds like a lot of strength there, and a lot of determination on your part. And I wonder, what are others seeing that they're concerned about?
I don't know. I mean, I do my work. I show up for work. I'm never late. I do, you know, I mean, my scores just came out, and it proves that my work is great. So I don't know what they're concerned about. I mean, I'm party on the weekends, yeah, but so does everybody else. I'm just doing the same things everybody else is doing. I mean, yeah, I get pissed sometimes, but I mean, I have a lot to be pissed about. I don't think it's just not fair. Nothing's fair.
Well, tell me about being pissed.
Yeah,
tell me about being pissed.
I mean, it's just bull. This whole thing is bull. So what? That I was partying with my friends, but then this guy does this thing to me. So yeah, I mean, I did a little cutting, and I maybe, you know, tried to throw myself out a window, but I'm fine now. And just bull. That how come they get to decide what my future is? Why does the Marine Corps get to decide that they can kick me out just because? I don't even know why, because I'm doing my work just fine.
So in some ways, it sounds to me like that has the same kind of undertone of powerlessness that rape has. That others are making decisions for you, and it feels like you're powerless in the.
It's happened my whole life. I'm so used to it. My dad has totally controlled me and made all my decisions for me. So I couldn't wait to get out of there. So I joined the Marine Corps. So, I mean, I'm used to people being in control of me, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you made a decision for yourself to join the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And yet now, in some ways, this decision that you made to escape a bad situation, you're experiencing some replication of that old experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always, it's never fair. It's
Yeah.
just never fair.
Yeah.
Just everywhere I go, someone's in control of me, and I have nothing to say about it, even though I save my money and I work hard, and yeah.
Well, so you have all of these strong attributes at for as young as you are, to be saving money, um, to um, um, to be setting goals and achieving those goals, to be excelling in what has been your chosen field.
Which is exactly why I'm saying I'm fine. Why can't people see that I'm fine?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got it all together. I don't have any, so I don't know why I have to be here. I don't know why the Marine Corps is threatening to kick me out. I'm fine.
Well, and I don't know that either. But I hope we can kind of explore it together and figure it out. Um, so that there's not so much of that feeling of powerlessness. I wonder if we could talk for a minute about when you were cutting. Um, cutting's a defense mechanism. It's something we use to cope with feelings. Usually, there's one or two ways that um, shows up in our lives. Either we have such intense feelings inside that cutting releases some of the intensity of that emotion, or we are so numb inside that cutting helps us to feel. We know we exist when we cut. We can feel the pain. We can see the blood. Um, so, does either one of those sound like it might fit for what was happening for you during that period of time?
I mean, yeah, I was pretty messed up, but it did feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like, I don't know, it just felt good. Felt like it, I don't know. I could just stay in my room and I just couldn't help myself. I just did it, and it felt good when I was doing it. You know, my whole leg got pretty messed up, but now I've got a tattoo over all the scars. So, I mean, I'm fine. I'm not cutting there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it did feel pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if maybe we could explore what some of those emotions were. You said pissed off. I'd really like to hear what you're pissed off about. What do you want to say to people?
I want to say that it's bull that this guy's not getting in trouble. I mean, I finally filed something and there seems like there's nothing happening to him. So I just think that that's bull.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, who's moving away and I don't even have a home now. I have nowhere to go if I leave the Marine Corps because he's just moving away to another country. And yeah, I'm pissed off at the Marine Corps because they just making me come here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be here. I'm fine. Just feel like there's just everyone's against me. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Then they want to diagnoses and tell me my personality's all screwed up. So what am I supposed to do with that? Now my personality's screwed up? What hope?
What if your personality is not screwed up? What if you have maybe been reacting to some very real circumstances in your life?
I don't know. I just want to stay in the Marine Corps. I mean, I'll do whatever they say, but I don't know.
And sounds a little like being fine is a requirement for staying in the Marine Corps.
And I am fine. I was fine when my mom died. I was fine. Everyone tried to tell me I had to cry and be sad, but I mean, I'm fine. I'm always fine. I can always come back. So I don't know why the Marine Corps thinks I'm not fine.
A lot of courage there.
Yeah, I'm a Marine.
Yeah. Well, I would love, I thank you for chatting with me today, for talking to me today, even though you didn't want to be here. And I would love to continue for us to talk since you have to be here anyway. I'd love to learn more about you because it sounds to me like you've had a pretty tough life. Some pretty heavy things thrown at you. And you've been resilient in the face of that. But also wonder what it might be like for you to just be able to to talk about some of those feelings, to let them be with you, be present with you, and to have somebody to talk about with them. Because it sounds also like it's been a pretty lonely life.
I wish I could send her to you, Mary.
Oh, well, that's so now diagnoses. What do you think I would be looking for here or be pulling out of this conversation? Well, first of all, Jackie, Debbie's question was, how do you do this without it seeming like a question and answer, or I forget how she put it. From the two of you, give me a little bit of feedback about how did that feel?
Well, I will say that I really was struck by your join her in anger. Life is so unfair. This is someone who's close to me, actually, and it's very difficult sometimes to join her because I've heard it for a couple of years now. Okay. And so that felt really good as her. Like, that felt really good to, like, you became an ally for her, I felt like. And that really struck me. I thought that you became such a good ally because you joined her in that, like, you sort of encouraged her on, like, yeah, you have a lot to be pissed about. Yes, it's unfair. Those sorts of things, which I thought were really helpful. Mm-hmm. And I did not feel like you were trying to give me a diagnosis at all. I think that was kind of towards Debbie's question.
Okay. Yeah. And that's especially with someone who is mandated. We have to join them. And, I always encourage us as therapists to think about, if somebody was forcing you to go in to see somebody you've never seen before, to talk about extremely personal issues, things with them, would you not be resistant and reluctant and angry. And so rather than trying to talk them out of that, to enter in with them. And did you notice how when she's talking then about being pissed off, it led into more and more and more of, I didn't argue with her that she wasn't fine. Well, let her be fine. It's okay. But then let's let her narrate. What is her narrative, and how can we encourage that narrative to unfold? And did you hear how much of her, the rape, the requirements of the mandating of by the Marine Corps, which is, that's a generalized body. So as we continued to work, I'd want to break that on down to, so who specifically is saying that there's a problem here and insisting that you get counseling. Because what I would want to do is continue to explore that. What are others seeing that they're concerned about? It chained to dad, and dad is leaving, dad is moving, and I no longer have a home to go to. I'm married, but he is disconnected. He plays video games. And so part of what I'm wondering is, who in the world listened to anything this woman has had to say? And who in the world especially listened to her about this experience of being raped? Listen to how many times she said everybody else was doing it. Well, yeah, everybody else was drinking, partying. Not everybody else got raped. So, wow, Austin had to leave us. Paying attention. I need to watch time. Yeah, we're getting close on time. So what did I learn about her in terms of a diagnosis? What do you think I'd be leaning toward?
I first thought was some kind of trauma.
Okay. Yeah. I'd be looking at trauma clusters, Brianna. That'd be where I'd be starting. We didn't get into the which I would have wanted to. Me saying, wonder how you're sleeping. Are you getting, sleep giving you good rest, or sleep interrupted? How about eating? And so just some of those things to let me know, to have somebody here who is maybe in some kind of generalized depression. But I would be leaning more toward some kind of trauma. Now, do I have enough to diagnose PTSD? I do not. If I go back to the criteria, I don't have enough to diagnose PTSD, but are there certainly a series, at least, of trauma events here, probably little t rather than all big T, the rape being one big T event. So I would be beginning with that there are trauma related symptoms here. Now, in terms of character structure, what did you hear?
Attachment.
Attachment. Mm-hmm.
And integration.
Integration.
Mm-hmm.
Difficulty acknowledging feelings. She doesn't seem to have any strong relationships. Definitely that sense of I have no belonging place, unless I'm in the Marines, I have no place to be. And now the place that I've chosen that I thought was going to be a safe place for me has become unsafe. It feels really unsafe. So Debbie, did that help at all? Was that kind of what you were looking for?
Yeah, that was very helpful.
Okay. Anybody else? What did we just got a couple minutes? What did you see or hear that was helpful?
Well, I had a question actually. So would you ask more questions about her drinking? Would that be something that you would ask more about?
Probably within the context of she's normalizing the drinking in that everybody does it. And so, yeah, I would want to morph into at some point asking about, so everybody's going out drinking. So tell me what a weekend of drinking looks like for you guys. About how much, what do you think you might drink in a weekend? And are they drinking beer, or are they drinking hard stuff, or are they mixing back and forth? When she talks about a weekend, are we talking about Friday evening to Sunday night when they report back to the base, or are we talking one continuous party, or are we talking hour spurts, or a few hour spurts where they go out and the drinking is pretty heavy? But it's for a shorter period of time. It's not consistent or continuous, not consistent, but continuous. So.
And I guess I would add an interesting note just on this particular person. She actually got diagnosed with borderline by one of the counselors she was seeing. And I don't know how much more, I mean, she doesn't open up, to them according to her thing. But it's interesting because I was, when I was studying borderline, I was like, yes, and things that I know about her. But when you were talking about the trauma stuff, of course, she's had a lot of it in her life. But were you thinking about borderline also, just given some of the stuff, or was that just too early? Or
it would be too early for me to start looking at borderline and her. I'd need some more information.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of that is in a case where someone is mandated to therapy like that, particularly in the military, there usually is some kind of report that accompanies it. So, so theoretically, I would have I'd have some background information about what her superiors
are seeing
that has caused them to be concerned. It's Brent, you had asked about using some of the various skills. Were you able to hear that even in this initial interview, I was using quite a bit of attuning confrontation?
Mm.
And so, not directly challenging her reality, but also bringing those alternate possibilities in. I wasn't pushing in on a lot of stuff at this point because I don't want to make her any more defensive than she already is. But I'm beginning to flesh out some of that um, uh, information.
Yeah, one thing that kind of jumped out to me too was just how you were found ways to really see positives. I thought that was really good. I mean, 'cause, you know, obviously there's a lot of bad, but you found ways that you could point out really things that you could encourage her on. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that stood out to me as well, and I felt like that was a big connecting point where I felt like there was a connection and there was a starting, you know, the forming of a alliance and a collaboration. I think because of a lot of validation, both just overall, both the strengths and the hard things she's experienced.
Yeah, yeah. And did you notice that when I would validate something, I was validating what she had told me about. I wasn't making up attaboys. I was taking what she was telling me and feeding it back to her, mirroring it back to her as validation. Because I think about how powerless somebody in this position has to feel. And so and basically options taken away, you go or you get booted. And so she's grasping for validation of herself. Where it's not, if her superiors were saying, hey, we're concerned about you because you've got this great record and you are everything that a Marine that we come to expect from a Marine, and yet we're seeing some things that we're worried about you, we're concerned about you. It doesn't happen real often in the military. It does happen, but it doesn't happen real often in the military. More often it's shape up or ship out. And again, her age. She is very young to be thinking about losing losing what has been her anchor, been her belonging place. It has given her identity.
I appreciate you saying that, by the way, because I had missed that in talking with her. I just hadn't thought of that point. It's a very, very important one.
Yeah, yeah. And soapbox again, but so often we see this with people with young people in the military. They've gone in at 18 and they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and sometimes have had 4 or 5 deployments in that length of time. They're still kids, their brain is still forming. And so they don't know what to do with all of these experiences that they've encountered. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of internal conflict, and because of their experience, we can sometimes meet them at as if they were older than what they are cognitively and emotionally. And that would be another reason, Jackie, that I would be hesitant to jump right into a borderline diagnosis. Now that makes me really curious about what the people in the military were seeing that or what was leading up to the. I'd be really distressed if it was just the cutting and a suicide attempt.
I think there's other things. I mean, just that I know from that lineup with the board. Sadly, I mean, yeah, she definitely is very impulsive. I mean, she was drunk and got married the day she got married to this 18-year-old who she didn't want to leave. Abandonment, I mean, attachment stuff. But anyway, they were kind of drinking and got married and at the Justice of the Peace. And she has told me other stories. And by the way, she was completely functional, well-behaved teenager before she went in the Marine Corps. She just fell off. I mean, she was holding it together better, I should say.
I was going to say
all this,
that.
Yeah. So anyway, but when I was studying the borderline, I was trying to find the hole in the diagnosis, and it was difficult, unfortunately. But well, her hearing that diagnosis was very devastating for her.
I would imagine it was. Yeah. Particularly if there wasn't some good explanation to her about why that particular diagnosis may have developed.
Yeah. She's very shut down from hearing anything.
Yeah. Well, and really, who could blame her?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for another good evening, and hopefully this was helpful to you in some ways. If you have questions, give me a shout out, and I will try to get back to you as quickly as I can. I think I've answered everybody's email questions up to this point. If I haven't, please let me know, because I've just overlooked it, and I will get back and get you answers as quickly as I can. So look for your responses about your paper, your diagnosis paper. Look for some feedback on that no later than tomorrow. It'll be coming your way, because that's what I'm going to start with when I tie in the morning. So thank you. And have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope you're getting some nice weather, nice days where you are. And let's just keep pursuing this. I will also be posting some additional resources. I haven't gotten those posted yet this week, but I will post some additional resources for you in my professor's overview. All right. Thank you all so much. Rest well.
Thanks, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Mary, can I ask you a couple questions really quick?
Sure. Yeah, let me turn the recording off though. So
thank you.